Well, welcome everyone to the James and Rory, or as I said, a Rory and James podcast. We got it wrong way around there. I'm James, and I'm joined by Rory. Hello, Rory.
Hello again.
Yes, back. It's been a minute, but we're back.
Yes.
So we're going to go a little bit off piece with this podcast this week. We haven't prepared anything. We haven't done any research. We're just going to talk about the theme of um, acting and theatre and how we got into it. But we're just going to flow with it and do a bit of improv, basically, which seems relevant to the topic. So, Rory, I don't know if you wanted to start. So, where did your love for acting come from, and how did you get there?
Oh, crikey. Well, I suppose I got into school plays and things by default. I assume you're referring to Orpheus. Orpheus was one of my colleges, and we didn't meet that way, James and I. But it has. We were both involved with it at different times. How Orpheus started, it was Richard Stilgoe's house originally, and it was used to house people who were doing arts courses. And because the courses were short term, the Orpheus Centre, which was formerly his family home, became an ongoing place for that. And how I became involved with that, one of Richard Stilgoe's colleagues was, unbeknownst to me, was reviewing a play I was in, and was trying to look for a school to use the some of the students to do a theatre show, to give the example of what Orpheus could do if it was able to start, and that's how it first started. And I started as an apprentice there doing arts courses, but an external arts course that I did when I was there resulted in me doing. I had to observe a workshop, and I ended up going to Folio, and that's where James and I met. It was an arts group. Do you remember how you got involved with that, James?
Yeah, well, similar to you, I got involved for acting just from doing school plays and stuff, and then joined this after school club Folio that you mentioned.
Mm.
That's where we met, obviously for the first time. And then that's why I then wanted to go on to volunteer for Orpheus because it being creative arts and college and that kind of thing. And then ended up doing drama for GCSE and that and A level. Really enjoyed it. Never really picked it up after school, but that's sort of this interesting, sort of similar journey to you, really.
Yeah, and I was sitting in what we call the port cochere at the Orpheus Centre, in between doing these rehearsals and arts courses, and I think you just walked in, didn't you? And I was there, as far as I
Yeah, it
remember.
was one of those great coincidences in life where you were in the outside the reception area.
Yes.
There was always like a mini courtyard, and you had your cap on,
Oh yes, I
and
remember.
that was that really, and then never looked back. What's that, 25 almost years
Uh,
ago?
2001, so 24, 25 years ago.
Good grief, that's terrifying.
It feels like five
Yeah,
seconds. It feels like 5 seconds ago, as a lot of these things do. Actually, I was
yeah.
yeah, I'm still linked with Orpheus now. I still do external shows occasionally with a colleague of mine, and James is called Anne Lovelace. So I still do a lot of stuff with her, charity shows. We met via a course that I was doing with Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. But more recently, I've been doing stuff with Polka Theatre, in the capacity of somebody who um, is it ushering, working off stage. So it's good to be in the atmosphere. You find that with theatre, a lot of the plays alternate, but when I work constantly with the members of staff, and just the plays keep repeating, it's more the place you're involved with than the performances. I recently there was a production of The Princess and the Pea. It was their version, and they had an understudy on stage performing the princess because the um, the actress, the original one, wasn't very well at the time, so they had a girl replace her just for that one or two performances. In fact, it was 9 shows, and this understudy was really was literally working from a script live on stage and acting at the same time, and it was really weird seeing it from off stage. How do you feel when you're on stage, James? When you're doing
Well,
your
I,
guitar
I
work?
did used to love it back in the day. I really did. The sort of buzz you get from, I guess it's an ego thing, isn't it? The attention all being on you, as it were.
Mm.
But really, really did enjoy that buzz, I have to say. Was it a similar thing for you as well?
It is. It is, as a general rule. It is. But when you're looking back at it later, you really miss the community of the arts world and the actual substance of having the people around you, and that sort of extreme. which relates back to what I was saying about being able to return to the theatre as a volunteer. But we've played music in stage. How did you get in? How did you get into your guitar work? Because we worked on stage doing that, didn't we?
Of course, yeah. I'd almost forgotten that. That we ended up doing music together, didn't we? And performed a couple of shows. One in a charity event in Oxted, and then we did a show at the Orpheus. And was it called Jam something?
Yeah.
Jam
Oh,
Club?
yeah. Yes, it was Jam Club, wasn't it? They used to do an early. It was a Thursday evening jam club, and you and I performed. It was just so I was on vocal and you were on guitar, rather than us having a full band. But it was still fun doing it. I think what was interesting was you were still able to play with your electric guitar and stuff like that. And I think we've still got that recording somewhere, actually. Strangely.
Oh, blind! We'll have to dig that out for a future podcast, don't we?
Quite right.
Yes. Ones out. Yeah. And have you got any like a particular standout memory of like one of your favourite sort of shows you did at Orpheus, or just generally before?
Well, this one doesn't involve Orpheus. Well, it does and doesn't. A colleague called Stephanie Morgan, who I vaguely knew in my later part of my Orpheus time, we were doing the Edinburgh Festival in 2007, and it was a thing called Head Over Wheels, which basically it was about love, disability, relationships, music, the whole shaboodle, basically. And I got together with a bunch of acquaintances who became friends as we did it. It took 11 months from conception to actually performing on stage back in 2007, and that was the most intense 4 weeks theatrically that I've ever had. But as with a lot of these things, it's very difficult to then repeat that level of intensity with a particular group of people, particularly when talking about that from almost 18 years ago. That was unbelievably, and it's still a very intense memory. What about you? What stands out amongst all that you've done theatrically?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, that. Because I'd got the sort of quote unquote lead role in a play at school called Skellig, based on the book, and I was Skellig, so which sounds great, but actually wasn't necessarily a main part. And I remember one of the memories of that was that for most of the first half of the play, I have to be on stage under a sheet, basically hidden, and I had to sit entirely still for the whole of that. Yeah, I'd say probably something like 15-20 minutes of the first act, which is obviously incredibly unpleasant and not exactly the rock and roll part I thought I'd had.
Yes,
but nevertheless, that was quite a memory of sort of feeling like you were a big part in a show.
Yeah. So activity-wise, contrast to that, when you actually were at your best on stage and you were moving around or whatever or performing, what sticks in your head through that when you were performing?
Yeah, well, for the Skellig one, genuinely, I don't remember a lot, but I do remember the Folio one we talked about earlier. We did a play in Red Hill at the Harlequin Theatre that was based on the Spanish conquest of South America. And I remember I was a character called Pizarro. Yeah. I just remember really enjoying that. Felt like one of my favourite roles, where I really felt like I had good lines, really interesting, acting scenes to do and that kind of thing. And I remember that being like a bit of a highlight for just for like pure acting reasons.
Do you prefer music or do you prefer acting?
Funnily enough, I probably prefer acting, but I've done a lot more music than acting, I think, over the years. What's your answer to that one?
Oh, I don't know. I suppose if you're acting, there's more responsibility on you to remember your lines, whereas with music, you can remember it as a song. So music's slightly easier, but acting is expressive. So I guess acting brings the same reward, really.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, isn't it? That you get a similar buzz out of both, don't you?
Yeah, but it's interesting also to think that, you see, when you're acting, when it's people say to me, people in general, actors, how can you be so expressive and confident on stage and perhaps shyer off stage, as many actors are? And I think fundamentally the reason is that what you're doing on stage, either as a musician or as an actor or as a speaker, you've pre-planned what you're going to do. If you're in conversation, there's always the aspect of the unpredictable, So I think that's the difference between life and acting on stage as planned, really.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, fair enough. We're almost out of time, but sort of any final thoughts on acting, sort of what you've done over the years in terms of music? Anything you're particularly proud of, or anything like that?
Well, I'm very proud of some of the stuff we've done, and certainly the podcasts, including this one and the past ones that we've done. And I think also having discovered something a bit like Orpheus, in this case polka theatre, as a theatre usher that I now do, I've now got an external thing I can go back to, as opposed to it being a one-off performance that you then miss. And working with the community in a more constant way, or a constant way outside of a academic context is very, very, very rewarding. How do you
That's
feel
an
about all
interesting
that?
one. Yeah, I think I in particular enjoyed. I think the most creative I was when we had a phase in sort of my latter years of Orpheus where we were doing a lot of songwriting. I remember we even did a session in the recording studio in Orpheus.
Yes.
And that was genuinely quite exciting to, record your own music, that we'd written from scratch. That I remember that being a particular moment of feeling like, yeah, that's genuinely, something quite interesting and different.
Yeah, we did. Do you remember we did that whole thing in a day, the recording and the mixing?
We just incredible.
Just had the one day working with the other guys. Yeah, it was great. Incidentally, guys, what we're going to do with the next podcast that sequels this is I'm going to do some theatre based research and see what I can discover and see how our research conversation is different from this one. So when that's published alongside this one, you'll have the latest to refer back to. And don't forget, we have done part episodes, so also look at those too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So, we've got lots to come, basically. So, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
And thanks as always for listening. And we'll see you on the next one.
And don't forget the feedback. Thank you so much. Goodbye.